more a vision that will truly endure. There's no blueprint, the old rules have gone, so let's rewrite them together. Since The Economist was founded, it's been a champion of progress. At Economist Impact, we know what it takes to turn insight into action. Convening analysts and industry experts, influential audiences, global thought leaders, working with leading organizations, governments and non-profits to tackle tomorrow's biggest challenges. By combining the rigor of a think tank with the creativity of a media brand, we tell the story with real-world information and illuminating data. Together, we can make a powerful impact. The only limit is your imagination.
Good morning, everyone. Are we ready? We're mostly here. Welcome to Commercializing Quantum Global 2025. My name is Jason Palmer, one of the Economist's local quantum nuts. I used to be more so, former science correspondent, now on our podcasts. I'll be your host for most of the program, a majority of the program, not all of it, until it splits tracks later in both days, because I can't be in two places at once. Yeah, right? You guys have been to a lot of conferences, and that is a perfect setup for the thing I'm supposed to do now, which is make a quantum joke. Not going to do it. It's also been suggested to me that as an icebreaker for the whole room, we do a little exercise called speed networking. It's going to feel a little bit like church. Everybody, stand up, meet your neighbor. To get some business cards out, this is the time. You got some fresh ones printed. So much enthusiasm for the networking.
I'm a fan of comic books, so Peter Parker could be.
Yes.
See, I knew this was going to cause mayhem, but they told me to do it anyway.
I just, it's a generous statement. Germany might
Please take your seats. The program is about to begin.
just living in the past, and not even in the present, and nobody has an idea of the future.
Guys, we got a lot to get through. Come on.
That's my contribution to maybe changing it. I'm not a politician myself,
Right,
so
I'll press ahead.
yeah.
As you just mentioned, it is an absolutely monster program, and why wouldn't it be the UN International Year of Quantum? They should do this more often. Thank you for being compliant and enthusiastic. There's going to be loads of time for networking. In the parts where we're in here, the conference website will tell you that along the way we'll be talking about promise and peril, applications and limitations, hype and reality. Again, two sides of the coin. Like a superposition gag. The conference is already 4 years old, and I've been here at each one of them, and it's already sort of changed character. This one, if you look through, lots of focus on end user case studies, real world applications, actual returns on investment. There was a time that would have been very bold in those terms. But in a lot of ways, things haven't changed since the first one. Again, or still, depending on your perspective, there's this competition about platforms, which one or ones will win. And there's still quite a focus on hype and reality. The reality seems to be that logical qubits seem closer. This is an excellent time for me to pause, start the audience participation things. Raise your hand if you know what a logical qubit is in contrast with a physical one. Good, good. If you didn't raise your hand, ask your neighbor. It really helps. Just want to make sure we don't lose you. The hype, even given that reality about logical qubits that I think we agree on, the hype is still a concern. Did anybody see this op-ed piece in Nature recently, mid-April? Don't believe the quantum hype. I think this is good. I think the industry should be sort of poked at in this way, held to account, make people sort of show they're working and what have you. There is still, one of the things that's in common from the start is about the degree to which it's an engineering problem versus a science problem. In 2018, I came under a lot of fire for writing that, quantum is nearly here, the problems that remain are largely engineering, they're no longer science. Oh, was there a pile on? How dare you say there's not science? More participation. Who thinks the problems that remain are engineering problems, not science problems? Good. Debate amongst yourselves. Funnily enough, I heard that very same phrase when I was preparing. I've spoken to a lot of you before the conference, and someone said almost those exact words to me. I said, hey, careful. Look, today and tomorrow should draw a nice sharp line for everyone here between that hype and the reality. But to be honest, it seems like moving targets almost everywhere you look. Look, enough from me. I'm 43 seconds over already. Quick housekeeping. Questions and answers. We want this to be a lively debate. Use the Slido app. The code at some point will cycle through there. I believe it's CQ25. Submit your questions that way. There will be a mic in the audience, but we prefer to use that. In case of fire and other calamity, I'm supposed to tell you there are fire marshals here. Follow their directions. Go for the exits. At the back of the building, head for the outside the Old Royal Free Hospital. At the front of the building, big lower forecourt. At the side of the building, you're supposed to go to the tanning shop. If you use your time wisely, you might get something done in the meantime. Okay, and I'm not allowed to eat today unless I thank the sponsors, so big deep breath. We would like to thank IBM, Inflection, Microsoft, Continuum, EY, Deloitte, AWS, D-Wave, OQC, Phasecraft, PQ Shield, Q Control, Quantum Motion, Kilimanjaro, Riverlane, Google, IonQ, Orbit Computing, Oxford Ionics, Photonic, Plan QC, Rigetti, Strangeworks, Alice and Bob, Classique, Evolution Q, Horizon X, National Quantum Computing Center, and Quantum Index. Whew. Thank you for your attention during that difficult period. No more from me. I'm 1 minute 50 over now. This was my only job, was to keep the trains running on time. We're going to start with a pre-recorded message. Sadly, Lord Patrick Vallance couldn't be with us. He's the Minister of State for Science, Research and Innovation. He's talking about backing science and building markets.
I'm delighted to be opening the Economist Commercialising Quantum event. I'm really sorry I can't be with you, but I'm super excited that this is about commercialising quantum, because the science has reached a stage when that indeed is one of the great challenges. How do we make sure that we get the full potential of this? Quantum technologies and the research behind them is definitely thriving in the UK. The UK quantum sector has benefited from a decade or more of government support through the National Quantum Technologies Programme. For example, Circa Magnets have trialled the world's most advanced brain scanner in healthcare settings to track brain function and diagnose conditions. The UK quantum sector continues to be central to this government's mission for growth. There's no doubt it's going to play an important part of our forthcoming industrial strategy. That in itself is quite amazing, that this is now embedded in how government is thinking about the future. We're focusing the UK's public investment across 5 ambitious national quantum missions. These missions include NHS trusts benefiting from quantum sensing enabled solutions by 2030, and that by 2035, the UK will have deployed the most advanced quantum network at scale. Last month, we announced £121 million further investment into the sector over the next 12 months. And today, I can announce another 14 million for a new Innovate UK contract for innovation competition to accelerate quantum sensing technologies. This competition will support the deployment and adoption of new quantum products in sectors such as healthcare, transport, defence, construction, and energy. And again, what's impressive is that all these sectors are now knowing that they've got to link up to the opportunities presented by quantum sensing. We're also investing £22.5 million through Innovate UK again into quantum computing and networking projects aimed at accelerating the adoption of quantum technologies in a wide range of sectors. In other words, the things we already know are there and work to get the proper uptake and use. This year's funding also supports the UK's flagship National Quantum Computing Centre and funding for research and skills. And many of you will know that the National Quantum Computing Centre is, I think, unique in the world in terms of the number of different technologies it brings together in a way that's accessible to small companies, academia and industry. Speaking of skills, I'd like to thank Professor Sheila Rowan and all the members of the Quantum Skills Task Force for their recently completed report. Their recommendations set out how the UK can meet the skills the UK needs, particularly the engineering and technical roles that definitely are needed. We're also taking steps to ensure that the UK has a pro-innovation environment, with the UK's Quantum Regulators Forum inaugural meeting taking place in April, to bring together different regulators, different regulatory bodies with an interest in quantum to help make sure that we're prepared for the impact and can have a regulatory environment that supports innovation. What's more, and importantly, we're strengthening our quantum research partnerships with allies overseas. We've recently signed a cooperation agreement with Japan, adding to our agreements with the US, Canada, Australia, the Netherlands, and Denmark. And I certainly was discussing quantum when I was in Denmark towards the end of last year. And the UK is now also part, again, of Horizon Europe's quantum programs, and I'm really pleased that that's the case. The program provides UK researchers with funding and access to collaborate on EU projects, an important basis for our deepening European partnerships. Let me conclude with a call to action. If you're a quantum innovator, please keep doing what you're doing and make sure that you get involved with the UK's programs to help you if they can. If you're an investor and you're not investing in this exciting technology, why not? This is an area that is going to change so many areas of the world. It's at a stage when commercialization is the question. How do we do that well? How do we do it effectively? And we build on a very strong legacy of support in the UK for a world-class sector. And I would like to sort of thank, as part of this, Peter Knight for all the work he's done to get it to the stage it is in the UK, with a very thriving, exciting academic centre linked to an increasingly thriving, exciting and high potential commercial sector. I wish you every success for the meeting.
Don't need to clap, he can't hear us. Essentially, Peter, you've already been introduced. I don't even know why I've come back up here. Sir Peter Knight is the chair of the UK National Quantum Technology Strategic Advisory Board and is going to talk about scaling in quantum information processing.
Right, let's get my first slide up. There we go. It's always very hard to follow Patrick Balance. I'm always obliged to have a note at the bottom saying does not necessarily represent UK government policy. Many things I'm going to say were already highlighted by Patrick just a few moments ago, so maybe they are government policy. Now, what we try to do in the UK is to build basically an escalator, a thing that takes us from early stage research right through to product. It's a deliberately planned program where we've funded research hubs, doctoral training centers, we've focus very much on the skills provision, as Patrick just said, looking at the ways in which we engage industry on industry-led challenge projects, collaborative R&D projects. We have a focus point for quantum computing, the National Quantum Computing Centre. We have the ability to invest through SBRI, the British Business Bank and NSIF, and in particular to look at how we could use procurement as a way of encouraging the thriving of our nascent quantum computing companies. Test and evaluation is a really important part of this, and then to do stuff at scale with the missions. Now today, unlike my usual talks, I'm going to focus very much on quantum computing. I usually say it's more than just quantum computing. I talk about sensing and timing. But today I'm going to focus pretty much on quantum computing. So if we look at where we put our resource so far, what we've done is funded 5 new hubs, research hubs. Some of the research hub directors are actually in the room on quantum computing, with headquarters at Oxford, integrated quantum networks, headquarters at Heriot-Watt, the biomedical sensing hub, headquarters in UCL and in Cambridge, quantum-enabled PNT, headquarters in Glasgow, and sensing, imaging and timing, headquarters in Birmingham. At the same time, we've got these very ambitious 10-year scale projects, the missions. And you heard about some of those already from Patrick. Some of them are very ambitious. By 2035, UK-based quantum computers capable of running 1 trillion operations. I'll come to that in a moment. So some of these are highly ambitious. What we've been able to do is to run this escalator by careful planning involving the community. And I'm pleased to say that today we've reinforced our Science Advisory Board, our Strategic Advisory Board, which I chair, with 5 new members drawn from industry, from finance, and from the startup and defense communities. Okay, so 5 new members are joining us in this one. And what we need to be able to tell you is that we remain open for business. We're early starters in this game. We've been running for 10 years. We've spent 1.1 billion of public money in this sort of area. And I think that what it's enabled us to do is to look at the entire breadth of things involving quantum technologies. What we'll be focusing on now is the way that we work much more at scale. In particular, how to move stuff so that our companies can thrive. In terms of the number of companies, we've got about 45 quantum startups, quantum engaged companies. We're probably second in the world in terms of both the numbers, the degree of private investment, and so on. But our struggle is going to be focused on scale. How do we deliver stuff at larger scale? And you see reports from McKinsey and others that quantum computing alone could contribute up to 11 billion to the UK's GDP by 2045 and lead to a large number of jobs in the area. So our plan is to realize these missions. So as part of the work that we're doing and socializing it with the community is to look at how with our partners we do it. And we would do it with our international colleagues. As Patrick said, we've signed MOUs with a number of countries around the world where we can see where there is an opportunity to work together. So looking at the recent investment, as I've said, what we tried to do, and I think succeeded, is a synthesized approach to this area, where we've actually looked really carefully at the entire pipeline. Damming the pipeline at an early stage so that you don't have early research as part of it would be fatal to us in the longer term. Equally, finding ways in which we could secure the financing necessary to scale at the other end of the pipeline is super important. So Secretary of State Peter Carr did announce the 5 research hubs. That gives us that early stage work that we feel is really necessary. Looking for scale, we've got various mechanisms that the British government can actually do to look at this. The NCIF in particular can look at taking early stakes in the companies, also looking at ways in which they can grow. NCIF has invested in 7 quantum startups already, and in 21 more generally in technology. The British Business Bank is also there, investing as an arm of government to see what we can do in terms of securing that early stage investment for these. Now, if we look at the infrastructure, what we've also tried to do is to ensure that what we've built is something where the infrastructure can allow us to realise the ambition of these various components. So institutes including National Physical Laboratory, the Digital Catapult, the Fraunhofer CAP in Glasgow, and the Royce Institute, plus all of the national labs, are all ingredients in which we make sure that we have the facilities necessary, working with researchers and with companies to realise these aspirations. So what we're trying to also to do is to make sure that the regulatory environment is appropriate. And again, as the Minister said, we established the Quantum Regulators Forum and looking at ways in which, at this early stage, what is necessary in regulation. Well, Quantum Day was on the 14th of April, and the government announced 121 million of money spent by government on quantum in the financial year 25-26. We're also heavily involved in the UNESCO International Year of Quantum. Heaven help me, I'm supposed to be chairing it for UNESCO, and I'm sure that all of you, I hope, are engaged with our programs throughout the world in that particular area. Now let me turn to the National Quantum Computing Centre, because that's an example of how we can bring all these things under a single roof to actually encourage the kind of innovation around quantum computing. It's a collaborative program between our 2 research councils, EPSRC and SDFC. We put a lot of money into the building, but in particular put a lot of money into staffing it appropriately with people who are real experts in the area, working with companies. They're there to address the challenge of scaling, especially in the various platforms. And what we want to be able to do is to engage with industry who could be the end users of this. And this is the Spark program, of which you'll hear more later on from people from MQC, especially from Michael Cuthbert. So one of the things that we've very much worked on is the testbed program. The testbed program is an ability to procure example platforms in quantum computing where we can access them, government users can find out what they do, industry can come in and investigate them, we can evaluate them, we can look at user adoption. And again, Michael Cuthbert later on today will be describing the details. And if you want to see what those platforms are, there are these 7 platforms. The companies involved, I think, are all in the room. And you'll see the details of that in Michael's talk later on today. But in particular, this will enable us to look at the spectrum of platforms to enable us to have the right information before we prematurely, otherwise, down select. Okay, so they run from ion traps, photonic platforms, silicon platforms, neutral atom platforms. Now, are we going to get there? Are we really going to be able to run 1 trillion operations by 2035? This is a graph that we've been using for some time. The quantum mountain, are we nearly there yet? The sort of question that your children always flag up when you're going on holiday and you're driving. Are we nearly there yet? Okay, so this is a dangerous figure. This is triply logarithmic, so worry about the error bars on it. On one axis, it's the number of qubits. On another axis is the error rate, and the other axis is the number of operations before it falls over due to decoherence. Okay? And the idea is you've got to climb up that mountain. And of course, there's lots of things you could focus on in climbing up the mountain. Do you go to extremely high quality qubits and then increase the number? Or do you increase the number and then do what you can on the fidelity of these things? And what you can see from this diagram is the way that the various sorts of platforms are going to be enabled by the expenditure in our mission funding to actually enable us to climb up that platform. This is based very much, by the way, on Andrew Steen's very early paper on basically an idea that gives you a quantum performance on this one. So superconducting, semiconductors, trapped ions are all allowing us to progress up that mountain, but we've got a long way to go, and you can see even by the end of the mission, we're still in the foothills of that quantum mountain. So we see a lot of people talking about whether this is overhyped. What we do see is the enormous progress made by quantum computing concerns to move from physical qubits to logical qubits and demonstrate error correction. And I think the real challenge for all of us is to realize that that journey towards fault tolerance is now much closer than it was. The progress towards quantum error correction over this last year has been really profound. That's the big difference between this year and previous economist meetings. The journey is really accelerating. Now, there is a danger with hype, but there's equally a danger from people who say it's never going to happen. Okay, so I want really to focus on those naysayers as well as those hypers. And this is one of my favorites. The bearded gentleman is Lord Kelvin. Lord Kelvin, at the turn of the century, last century, came up with lots of useful quotes that are worth remembering. I can state flatly that heavier than air flying machines are impossible. X-rays will prove to be a hoax. Radio has no future. That's Lord Kelvin predicting the future. And delightfully, the X-ray photograph there is a photograph of Lord Kelvin's hand. So let's be realistic. Hype could be extraordinarily damaging, but equally negativism of thinking, oh, it's too difficult, will make it just as bad. Okay, so the balancing act is really important. Let us not be Lord Kelvins. Actually, I'd love to be Lord Kelvin, to be honest. But you know what I mean, in terms of the denial of where we're going. So, a minute left. What we're trying to do in the UK is to build this concerted ecosystem that brings together researchers, industry, government departments, and the funding mechanism to build a long-term journey towards economic benefit from what quantum will bring to the world. I think we have breadth, we have depth, we've worked a lot on community building, and partnership with our friends around the world to enable this really to happen. So all of these are important. Thank you for listening.
Now, the first panel of the day is coming up, going from quantum utility to advantage, much like Valence. I'm not sure I much care for following you, Peter, but I will do my level best. May I call to the stage, please, if you can save that little seat for me, Subodh Kulkarni, Chief Executive of Rigetti, Chris Valence, Chief Executive of Oxford Ionics, Richard Murray, Chief Executive of Quantum Computing, Sarah Sheldon, Senior Manager at IBM Quantum, and Tom O'Brien of Quantum AI. Come on, give them a round of applause. I'm wary of panels this big, unwieldy. Lights can break out. I should know better than to ask each of you a question that you get to answer in your own time, but I'm going to trust you and give you a prompt. The question in the session description is, what does it take to move from today's early quantum utility to full-on quantum advantage? I'm interested in, here's your prompt, what does it take? Oh, don't tell me about where you are now. Don't tell me about where you'd like to get to. Tell me specifically and only, in like, I don't know, 45 seconds each, what it takes, what's missing, what the secret ingredients are for getting there. So if you'd like to start.
Sure, so I represent Rigetti. We develop essentially superconducting gate-based quantum computers. From our perspective, what it needs to get to the quantum advantage, if you will, when you can demonstrate practical applications superior than classical computing. Minimum number of qubits is 1,000, minimum fidelity 99.9%, 2-qubit gate fidelity, gate speeds faster than 20 nanosecond, and real-time error correction. If you get those 4 things, we think we can start doing real-life demonstration with quantum computing that are superior than classical computing. And our view is we are roughly about 4 to 5 years from that point right now.
Okay. Go on.
So in 45 seconds, this is going to be fast. Ultimately, it's better hardware. I think everyone here agrees what we need is substantially better hardware. And I think the way we think differently about this at Oxford Ionics is that we think supermetric here is error rate. If you can reduce error rate just a bit, everything becomes easier. You can reduce the number of qubits you need to solve these really large-scale problems down to something you can fit on a single thumbnail-sized die. We're now at the point where we've shown error rates that are substantially better than anything else out there, below 10 to the minus 4 error per 2-qubit gate, which then means we can tackle these really meaningful problems with just a few thousand physical qubits.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Richard Murray, Chief Executive of Orca, building photonic quantum computers. So again, like the others, agree that hardware is one of the main challenges. But I think our specific perspective is very much about very intense focus on usability and customers. And I think if you look at the history of computing, NVIDIA being the biggest success recently, it sort of litters with examples where someone's done something really well, but have failed to do something else adequately. The other things sometimes being software environments, usability, and so I agree with the others that hardware matters a lot, but in our experience it's also about very, very close integration, for example, with high-performance computing, and a great user environment to actually program real applications.
Okay. Sarah?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things that we need to get to advantage. Certainly we need the hardware and the software that allows the quality of systems that we need to do the applications that we think are candidates for advantage. We need the methods that we can verify that we are getting accurate outputs from our quantum computers. So I think we'll talk about error correction, but we also think there's, at IBM we work on methods in the near term like error mitigation, error detection, schemes that can get accurate results on the systems that we have today at a scale that's beyond exact brute force classical simulation already. But we also need those good problems that are candidates for advantage where we think there's a separation between quantum and classical. And that requires an ecosystem of people who are domain experts, HPC experts, who are really benchmarking problems against our best known classical methods and finding those candidates for advantage.
Okay. Tom?
So I'm coming at this from the theoretical side. I work on quantum applications. And when you look at the list of applications that we currently have that have been compiled out and have the T's crossed and the I's dotted, the number of gates you would need to execute is somewhere around the billion mark. Current error rates are about 10 to the minus 4, as we've heard from Oxford Ionics, or 10 to the minus 3 is what we've achieved in our large-scale supercomputing devices. I think it's really important when people report these numbers to report not the number you can achieve on a single qubit, but we need to integrate this across a large chip because you need to take that into account. The solution here, of course, is quantum error correction, which has been mentioned many times in the audience, and I really liked Peter's slide from the previous talk showing the difference between qubit quantity and qubit quality. And right now we're expecting that we need to scale up not to 1,000 qubits, but actually when you compile everything down to the fault tolerant level and you check everything that you need, real applications, the full promise of quantum computing will be unlocked at what we expect is about the million qubit mark, 10 to the 6, around 10, and that we expect to take about a decade. And then around 10 to the 4 qubits, which we hope to see in the next 5 years. I hope to see to start the beginning of practical application. But note that this won't be the onset of the promised quantum land where we can do everything that we've set out to do. This will be the point where we can start doing some very specific targeted use cases that are designed to be good for the quantum device as well as good for the application.
Okay. A fight has not yet broken out about platforms. Great start. The issue, though, is, some sort of different numbers shared. We stick to the hardware numbers for the moment. We don't want to get too nerdy about this, but I think for a lot of people who don't get nerdy about those kinds of numbers, what 2-qubit fidelities are good or not good enough or not as good as the best, benchmarking. How do people outside the sort of the core of this industry know how each of your companies is doing, or how the industry as a whole is doing? Is there yet a number, can we even sensibly talk about a number where we can say, this is how things are going, this is how close we are? Who wants that one?
Well, maybe I'll start to illustrate that the problem with benchmarking. I mean, one of my colleagues describes the problem with benchmarking as being there are lies, damn lies, and then there's benchmarking. Because, you know, as we're seeing in the quantum industry, everyone creates their own benchmarks. It's a sort of minefield of whose benchmark is best. I think one thing that is key, which underpins all of this, is very much about application benchmarking. You know, I mean, we can talk all day about how many qubits people need, how the quality qubits, and things like that. But let's remember that all of those are linked to our expectations to unlock applications and algorithms. So, as a sort of non-physicist, it makes sense to start with those applications. You know, what are the first applications? What are the requirements of those? And you can benchmark towards, you know, those actual applications. And this is how high-performance computing operates. You know, you can get benchmarks that tell you how good applications run on different high-performance computers. Quantum shouldn't be any different, and I think we are seeing, certainly Orca has some benchmarks against some of the first applications in, for example, machine learning and advanced machine learning. So my perspective, it's a little controversial, is that we have yet to migrate truly to beyond qubits, to application benchmarking, but in there lies genuine user engagement. People from user communities understand application benchmarking. They don't necessarily want to know about qubits.
No, that's fair.
In the US, DARPA has done a good job of creating benchmarking initiative programs for the last few years. We, along with many companies in this area, have worked with DARPA. And those are excellent programs. Yeah, there's still some confusion, and it's probably never going to disappear given the nature of this industry. But overall, I think we are in general agreement with how we measure fidelities, logical qubits, of course, versus physical qubits. There are some companies that talk about some different kinds of qubits, throwing everyone off. But most of us, I think, agree on the key benchmarks that DARPA has established over the last few years and continues to do so.
I think the other thing that's interesting to jump in there on, and I think Tom just started touching on this, is, you know, when are we there, right? If you look at the classical computing, you can't say at any one point in the evolution that this is where classical computers win. And people often talk about quantum computing as if there is a destination. With all computers,
Q-Day.
Exactly, with all computers, it's just about how we can iterate and get better and better and better. And it's more about the speed of progress than any eventual destination. There will always be theorists, there will always be users, there will always be customers who say, if you just get another factor 2 there, then it's done for me. There will also be customers saying, no, I want another 8 orders of magnitude until I even get out of bed. And that's just fine. What really matters is the flywheel of the industry, getting up fast enough to start touching on these early applications, as Tom's referring to, and then do this in a way where the next generation, the generation after that, you learn and iterate and can continue to scale.
Right. Sarah, do you have that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think device benchmarking is very important for tracking progress and how are the quality of the systems improving, and that gives some indication of where we are, how do you compare against things. But at the same time, you know, if you think about what are the applications you're going to run down the road, resource estimations are very hard if you don't know exactly what is that going to look like, what is the error correction code you're going to use. And I think what we focused on a lot at IBM is how do we have a practical path towards error correction, thinking about codes that have lower overheads. And as I mentioned in the near term, are there other techniques pre-error correction that can get good results out of quantum computers? So things where we have sampling overheads and we're classically post-processing and we can get good results out. So, you know, the device benchmarking gives you how good is the hardware, but you need to also think about how are the techniques that you're using on top of the hardware to reduce the effects of the noise. And then, you know, along the applications benchmarking idea, I think really systematically comparing, not application benchmarking as a device benchmark, but really application benchmarking, comparing quantum and classical state of the art to understand really is quantum a candidate for a solution to a problem.
Well, I think it's interesting that we've reached a stage now where application benchmarking is sort of a thing. Because I remember when these things were new and the qubit counts were like sub 10 and people were amazed. Now we can actually think about, okay, well, what can it do is already an enormous step to have made. I guess the question is, across platforms and modalities and approaches and what have you, is there, as there is in high performance computing, like just hand out a problem to everybody, like a standardized test, how fast can you do it kind of thing? Are we going to get there?
I reject the assumption of that. If you look at AI, right, you'd think we know how to benchmark AI. Every single different person building different types of AI hardware, AI software, all has their own favorite metric they're best at, right? Like ultimately, the customers also then don't care about this. They find platforms that have one particular benchmark that works well for them. But a slightly different customer can find a completely different benchmark that maps best to their use cases.
Richard?
Well, I'm going to be provocative, and I'm especially going to be provocative because what's the title? The Economist, Commercialising Quantum. As industry people, there is a very standard benchmark for adopting new technologies. It's something called return on investment. And the reason I mention that, half the people in the room are sighing, the other half are wondering what I'm talking about. I think in quantum, that phrase, even this talk, quantum utility, quantum advantage, what we should really be talking about is what is the return on investment. And we're all gearing up towards that, but it's not a commonly asked question. And I think what's starting to come out are several things that highlight how that formula is challenged because the system costs are expensive. You know, what is the return on investment when you're having to invest in a $100 million quantum computer? We need to answer that question pretty urgently. You know, what are the first applications? And this is a question that does scale. You know, at scale, these massive size quantum computers, if the scaling law doesn't work correctly, you're going to be faced with a quantum computer that costs $1 billion. What is the, by the way, I think there needs to be an alternative route to that. But I would suggest that this return on investment has been a staple of the business community for the time immemorial. So why not use that to quantum? And I think that's what at least Orca thinks is one of the priorities facing quantum.
Yeah, but return on investment is sort of privileged information. I'm drawing a big dumb comparison with, I go into into a big box store and I see a tower computer that has a sticker on it, tells me how good this thing is because everybody agrees on ways to measure that. Are you suggesting, Chris in particular, but in general, that such a thing is foolish to even look for, or that no one will ever agree it?
I would maybe say, I think there's kind of a spectrum of thought on, we need complexity theory-based proofs that we're getting an advantage from quantum over classical, to, at the other end, if it works, and we're getting good, useful results. And I think really in the near term, we need some rigorous heuristics for understanding the path towards that practical use case, right? So we need, for the research, we need to understand, we have these kinds of benchmarks, comparisons to direct where we go next, look for those good problems. And I'll just throw out one example. We've worked with a number of institutions in this establishing working groups that are thinking about different domains that may be candidates for quantum, and one of them is focused on optimization. And just in the past couple of weeks, they've put out a paper on this group of people from 16 different institutions looking at 10 classes of problems from optimization that are relatively hard to do classically at relatively small sizes, so they may be candidates for quantum. And they propose really systematically benchmarking those things. And maybe we get to a point where we're at a scale that we don't really care about, is it beating each method to what percent, and it's just useful and it's more accessible. But I think this benchmarking approach gives some rigor to how do we find good applications and iterate on our algorithm development in the near term.
I do think we need to have keep ourselves honest with the competition with classical computers though. Because if we keep telling people that we're gonna deliver a quantum advantage, and we don't, and people can keep saying, oh, I can beat your quantum computer with my classical hardware, they're going to lose trust. And the return on investment that we may get this year is not going to be the return on investment that we get in 10 years' time. And we don't need money now. We need to sustain a quantum industry that's actually going to go and deliver the devices that are going to benefit humanity. But we do need more applications research. One of the problems is that it's really hard to, I think someone here, maybe Richard already said, like, it's really hard to compile things down to a device that doesn't exist yet, right? We focused on this at Google. We've put out a $5 million X Prize in collaboration with GESTA, the Swiss Hub for Research, to try to get more, not just get more applications that are beneficial for humanity, but also get those applications down to real numbers that we can think about executing on the device, so that 10 to the 9 number that I mentioned earlier can be dragged down further. Right? For early fault tolerance, we're thinking about, we want to have applications have around 10 to the 6 or 10 to the 7 gates. Those are the numbers that we're really keen on seeing for the next 5 years, and we think we're going to get there. But applications research has been lagging a little bit, and we need to make sure that, as it was said before, I don't want to get a 1 million qubit quantum computer just for it to sit around idle because I don't know what to do with it. That would be a really bad state of affairs.
This comes back to the earlier comment that what this situation needs is an ecosystem, right? And we're going to talk about this later on in the conference, but getting the sort of users involved early, I recognize, is a real chicken and egg problem. Please come in and talk to us about the problem we can't solve yet. But surely it helps in working in tandem, and that the desires of end users might in fact, in some meaningful way, direct where you focus your efforts. Has anybody run into that yet? Does anybody want to run into that? What's missing from that?
I would argue that's already happening, and it's spinning up a lot faster over the last 2 years. And exactly as Tom was saying, right? You need software as well as better hardware. It's incredibly difficult to get a really motivated
and meatware, real people.
And all the other stuff around it. It's incredibly hard to have a really motivated large team of talented quantum software developers when all you're doing is proving it on a whiteboard and saying, I think it might work. We'll find out in 3 years' time. So as that hardware starts to converge with the software, we've already seen massive improvements. If you look at the hardware requirements people thought you needed 5 years ago to where we are now, lots of resource estimates have gone down by 6 orders of magnitude. And as a hardware developer, this is music to my ears. When people say, we checked the numbers a little bit and went from saying, we could solve this on a quantum computer, but it needs to be massive, to now you're closer to building this, actually we tightened up our estimates, and now you need a quantum computer with 10,000 physical qubits, not 100 million physical qubits. That's pretty good. And over the next few years, as hardware matures and as the software matures, these two things will converge more rapidly. So this is why I think a lot of focus around benchmarks is a bit of a nothing, right? You can pick your own benchmark and there's factors of 2 or maybe factors of 5 between them. But ultimately, they all give us the right direction. And with most benchmarks that people use now, you can't cheat them too much. Ultimately, you need better hardware, you need to get it better faster, you need better software, you need customers that can work with you all the things. And then ultimately, it's this ecosystem speed of iteration.
The greatest result of NIST has been the inspiration of the next generation of quantum scientists.
I was going to point out that there's dozens of problems that we are all familiar with, which are intrinsically very hard to do with classical computers. So it's naturally tempting to choose those problems when every time you advance your quantum computers to test out how good your computer is with those problems. And that's good, we should be doing that anyway. But in addition, it would help to take regular problems that are being solved by CPUs and GPUs and benchmark ourselves for those regular problems. Because that's where we are not doing an adequate enough job, in my opinion. I mean, ultimately, that gets to that ROI discussion that Richard was making earlier. Ultimately, data center managers are going to decide when quantum computers are going to enter data centers. And we have to show them that practical problems can be dealt with, not just some esoteric isinglass problem where we can claim quantum supremacy, declare victory, only to find out that a regular generic problem cannot be solved with a quantum computer with the efficiency of a classical.
Well, this is sparks more.
I'll just quickly jump off onto that and say I think there's a really interesting angle there which people don't talk about enough, which is power efficiency. Which is, it's easy to say I want to have this world-class supercomputer that can outperform any classical computer and solve a problem in a day that would take 1 million years. Actually, a lot of customers are very happy solving a problem in a day where a supercomputer solves a problem in a day, but doing it on something that costs less or uses 4 orders of magnitude less power. And some of the most interesting applications we're looking at the moment sit at this edge of it's just cheaper. It's not faster, it's just better and cheaper.
see also our conferences on AI. Park that one for the moment. Richard, quickly, got to move on to one more topic.
Oh, sorry, I was going to make one clear point, one point just to add on to what others. I mean, what we're really talking about here is co-design. And it is the case, and I think all of us are in agreement that what you don't want to be doing is building any of this stuff in isolation. You want to be, if you're a hardware person, you want to be immensely clued up with the application side and vice versa. And the reason for that is, in case it's not a big surprise to anyone, quantum computers are imperfect. And they always will, they will be imperfect for a long, long time, even beyond once we have error correction. So as an application person, you have to be super clued in to the hardware, to the noise models, to which qubits can be connected with other qubits, and what the noise models need to look like in order to actually run these applications. So I think it is clear that you need very, very close alignment. And in our case, we actually have hardware and software working together within the same company. You need very, very close alignment between the people building the hardware and the people running the low-level software and then the applications, if you want to extract the most value in the short amount of time possible.
A full stack of humans.
Full stack of humans. And by the way, that could be in partnership.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you have to do it all within one company in partnership, but also within a company.
I might be misusing the technology up here, but it would appear that there are no questions yet. First of all, is everybody empowered to ask questions? Do you know how to ask questions? Is everybody, yeah, do that. We want this not just to be us going blah blah from up here. Wait, no, use the thing. Use the thing. There is a mic going around if you absolutely refuse. But yes, please, now and for the rest of the whole conference, get involved when you can with these panels. We're setting aside time on purpose to make room for that. This is a multi-way conversation. The thing I want to get onto is if you come to this applications benchmarking. Applications are the measure. The customers will bring you your applications. Okay, it's early in the conference program, so we get to tackle this one like fresh. What applications do you mean? Which applications do we think A, are good for benchmarking, B, that people will see the return on investment, the sort of like super long range benchmark? Who wants that one? Who's got a favorite?
From what we have seen from our own work as well as others' work is applications that involve probabilistic questions seem to be more suitable for quantum computing, where you are asking questions, what are the chances of something happening? What are the chances of financial recession happening in the next 6 months? Very relevant question, at least for us in the US right now. But many questions like that, what are the chances of a drug molecule folding this way, that way, or the protein folding this way, that way? Deterministic kind of computation, standard addition, subtraction, those kinds of things are probably going to stay with CPUs and GPUs for a long time to come, and probably should never move to QPUs. It's the probabilistic analog kind of things where quantum computers seem to be more suitable, those are the applications that we should be looking at.
Yeah, I think we are focusing a lot on applications for quantum simulation, chemistry, and material science as a likely early candidate. And I already mentioned optimization. I think that's maybe a next application area to look at, and one where the classical world has many decades of really optimizing the methods for practical uses, and we can kind of follow that example as well. And then longer term, thinking about math problems like linear algebra, PDE solvers, things like that. And I may be more optimistic than the rest of the panel about near-term advantage, but I think those quantum simulation problems are kind of the earliest candidates that we'll be thinking about.
I think everything's been, all of the big topic areas have been said already. I will point out, we've spent probably 10 years learning what quantum computers can't do. There is huge issues with data I/O. As was mentioned, they can't, there's no quantum advantage in adding 1 + 1. And there are certain classes with problems. Optimization is a really tricky one because for general purpose optimization, we know we can only get a quadratic advantage, and we know that will not be enough to overcome the constant factor gap in a quantum computer. So this is a challenge. There are new and interesting technological developments algorithmic developments that have come in the last couple of years. And we're finding new classes of problems and new ways of playing with quantum computers to solve problems, for instance, in differential equations or solving large systems of coupled linear oscillators. There was a paper out of that from our group, which just found a new way of representing the entire problem that gave a quantum advantage. it's still early days. Like, it kind of seems weird to say this because we're 30 years in since Shor's algorithm. But it's early days into the field of quantum algorithms. Just because we've been so focused on trying to make these things a reality, now we have to start asking the questions. How do you commercialize it? How do you get there? And it's really cool to see the progress in the theory side of the field of the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'd just add, actually, you're not alone in wanting or believing in ultra immediate applications. So we're also of the belief that long-term stuff will happen, but as an industry, we need to be desperately striving for the very first applications as quickly as possible. So that's what we do. I don't think we're alone. I mean, our answer to that question is partly in optimization. Many of our customers have already tried a lot of optimization type problems, but I think our sweet spot that we really focus our efforts on is in advancing generative AI models. So there's a lot that's talked about in terms of adding quantum into machine learning. There's a lot that maybe isn't so real, but Orca has found several applications where you do put a quantum computer inside of an existing generative AI model, and we do see benchmark positive results, better generative AI models. So this is a massive point of contention, right? There's a huge probably disagreement on the panel about when would be the first application, which I don't mind diving into at that time. Yep. But I will say, as a closeout, my main point is it is imperative that we strive to deliver the first applications as quickly as possible, because users don't want to wait decades, and we all know that. So all of us being sort of on the forefront of delivering applications in as quick a short amount of time, I would say is imperative.
Sorry. I was just going to add to this idea of having more research and applications, and I think there is a huge opportunity for more algorithm development, and that's going to be relevant for the near term into the long term. I think today, now that we have systems that are at a scale that we've never had before, really being able to iterate and test things out is a new paradigm really for quantum. So maybe we're looking at kind of rigorous heuristics to understand what is the path here, but we need to keep making the hardware better, but at the same time having this ecosystem of people coming together and thinking about new ideas for algorithms and for applications.
And just to jump off that, if I may steal another 15 seconds. 12, deal. Any computer, any of the applications we have on computers now, most people wouldn't have predicted before computers actually existed. So part of this is having computers you can actually have a crack on. When you're at the point where you have to rigorously prove mathematical upper bounds on a whiteboard before you can run stuff on hardware, that sucks. When you can say this might just work, let's go and see, that's when you start really seeing virtuous cycles.
I waited too late. You guys are suddenly very enthusiastic with the questions, many of them anonymous. I would encourage you to ask the questions that are definitely not going to get tackled now when we go to the networking breaks. Hassle these people. Presenter's prerogative, I'm going to ask you the one I think make you squirm the most. If the question is about how fast we can make this happen for people, and speed being of the essence, someone asks, in a industry full of patents and closed doors, would an open approach mean useful quantum comes sooner and better? Shouldn't we all just work together? Who wants some of that?
We absolutely believe in open approach. We partner with many companies over here to allow their various parts of the stack. We partner with Riverlane for software. We partner with Q-Control and others for control systems and their software.
The spirit of the question, though, is about radical openness.
Completely open.
I think, certainly our perspective, probably one shared, is there is a huge amount to be gained from openness, and probably like others, we partner a whole lot with massive supply chains that already exist. But let's be honest, we're all commercial organizations. We need to keep hold of something that isn't open because we have investors that we need to pay back. So there's a balance, right? And by the way, part of the massive progress we're seeing in quantum is because of this massive influx of capital that wouldn't happen if everything was completely open. So there's a balance, and an exciting balance.
But fundamentally, the industry does need open collaborations to grow the ecosystem. Having a closed-end, mainframe-like approach is detrimental to the industry at this point.
And I think compared to many industries, it is actually very open. Everyone talks to everyone very openly at the moment. There's very little secret sauce that people really keep in.
I think also there needs to be a lot more collaboration between industry and academia. Quantum computing is still basic research, and there are still basic developments that are coming out every week from universities around the world that we care about, and that improves our performance and helps everyone get towards the goals that we're.
You were very much not in the it's just engineering camp.
Very much in the not it's just engineering camp.
Right. Sorry guys, we are out of time, but let's thank all the panelists. The fast movement of people, always the difficult bit. Thanks very much, guys. Thank you. Right. Next up, after an ongoing movement of people, we're going to hear from Jerry Chow, IBM Fellow and Director of Quantum Systems at IBM Quantum, who's going to be talking about the superposition of impact and hype.
Really excited to be here, and I know this is already the 4th iteration of this event, but it's actually my first one, and so I'm really glad to be able to be here and also follow that amazing panel, which I think was a really great jumping off point for what I want to talk to you all about today, right? Which is that I really want to give this picture of our path to quantum advantage, and especially what we're looking at IBM. Now, our mission at IBM is very simple. It's to build useful quantum computing and bring it to the world, and then also to make the world quantum safe. Now, why do we care about building quantum computers? Well, look back 100 years, right? It's when quantum mechanics was first born, and we've heard a lot about already that this is the International Year of Quantum, right? That the UN has anointed, and we've been doing a lot of the celebrations of that history. But really, quantum mechanics describes the complex math that really governs our whole world. It's, in some sense, it is the operating system of nature, of the universe. But in many ways, the computers that we've been building, anything that we have with our phones and our laptops and our traditional computers, it hasn't been able to run that math at scale yet. And we're only starting to unlock that with some of the quantum computers that we're building today. And that's why it's so exciting that we're getting to get to a point where we're getting a lot closer to addressing some of these really challenging problems in the world. Like actually building better fertilizers and coming up with improved food supply problems, right? Or from designing better drugs and understanding ways to have more targeted therapeutics. Or financial series modeling, right? Improving the predictive nature of risk and so forth that is going to impact so many different industries. Now, these are all billion-dollar problems, right? We're talking about a huge scale when we're talking about commercializing quantum computing. And in fact, BCG recently prognosticated that this is a $500 billion opportunity for all of us at maturity in quantum computing. Think about that. That's huge, right? And there are all these industries that touch so many of our lives that quantum has the chance to really take a foothold on. But what is it going to take to actually commercialize and realize this market? Well, I think it's really on two fronts. We need to prime the ecosystem to explore new ways to leverage the quantum computers that we built to solve them. And we need to build the platforms that actually allows the users to do so. And so at IBM, that is exactly what we're doing. We've been leading quantum computing along all dimensions in terms of hardware, software, and ecosystem. Now, I know a lot of people like to say that, and they're saying leading in different various dimensions, but we really put our money where our mouth is, and we can show how we're leading in these different dimensions. When it comes to quantum hardware, I think there were some discussions of benchmarks. A simple thing to look at, really, number of qubits and the error rates. Really simple in terms of a rubric for how to consider performance. You obviously want to have larger numbers of qubits so that you can perform larger circuits, quantum circuits. It tells you basically the size of the potential molecule. You can look at the number of features you can encode. But the number of qubits is absolutely important to continue to scale for the problem sizes to be addressed. And then of course, you need depth. You need depth of those circuits, which is governed by the error rates. Now we've been pushing on all fronts in this case, in terms of scale as well as quality, and we intend to continue to do that. And not only that, but as we make this year-over-year progress of improving these devices in performance, we make them available. They're usable, they're benchmarkable. You can go and test these right away today. They're not just a point that I claim, there's something that can be benchmarked and actually rigorously tested by anyone. Now, along that dimension of performance, there's also the key feature of speed. When it comes to actually running real workloads, you're not just running a single circuit and you're done. But real workloads involve iterations of multiple quantum circuits in conjunction with classical runtimes. And the speed of iteration there is really important to actually get real results in a reasonable amount of time versus taking, say, days or even weeks for results to return. And that's why when it comes to different platforms, superconducting qubits has a significant advantage in speed over atomic-based or ion-based systems. Hundreds to thousands times of speed impact, which also translates to real dollars when you start to look at the cost to actually run these on various different platforms. And so really what we see with superconducting qubits and why at IBM we focus so much into this technology is that it's the most performant and it brings the best value. Now let's talk about software, right? I think there was a good discussion earlier about openness. Well, the openness comes in the software stack. And Qiskit is our open source software development kit that really allows for the community to build on top of it, but in a way that scales and in a way that also leads to extracting the best performance from the underlying hardware. Qiskit is by far the most popular quantum software development kit out there. It's been it hit 74% on Unitary Foundation survey in 2024. And in terms of dependent projects, it's also the one with the most integrated programs that are built right on top of it. Now, what's fun is that in the early days when we first released Qiskit, it was just about engaging the community and learning, and it was really fine-tuned to best work at a scale of like 5 qubits. But we really focused on driving its performance at the 100 qubit level, right? And that performance is also, again, benchmarkable and measurable through open source suite of benchmarks we call BenchPress, where we were able to compare it against a number of the other software development kits out there. And Qiskit outperformed all of them in terms of reduction in number of 2-qubit gate counts in constructing circuits, as well as in the speed of generating those quantum circuits. When you're really starting to use quantum computers at scale, you definitely don't want your software to be the bottleneck. And so Qiskit 2.0, which is our latest iteration, continues to push those benchmarks ahead and is really sort of the hallmark in terms of performance from a software perspective. Then from the ecosystem point of view, so IBM has really built a large global community around quantum computing. Since we first started putting systems on the cloud, we've now deployed cumulatively 80 quantum computers. This has touched 600,000 users across our ecosystem. And in terms of our learning platform, which I talked about as an important piece of how we actually grow those users out there, 10 million learners through our IBM Quantum Learning Platform. And today our business ecosystem, the IBM Quantum Network, has over 275 members. And this consists of industry members, national laboratories, universities, startups, many of you are here. And really we see this as the network that we're growing around our ecosystem to drive some of those challenging problems that Sarah and others are already mentioning, but exploring quantum advantage and how to best leverage the machines that are coming out. And really, you start to see that we're building this groundswell, and if anything, I think that we're at a point where our cycles of learning are starting to accelerate. So I want to give you a little bit of history in the past few years of why I feel so confident about that. Right, so in 2022, we first broke the 100 qubit barrier. This was with our IBM Quantum Eagle processor at 127 qubits. But at that scale of 100 qubits, we talk about 100 qubits a lot, right? But it's really important to know why we talk about 100 qubits. Because it's at the scale where quantum states are no longer are able to be represented classically. Right? So you see, when you represent the state of 10 qubits, a classical computer with only like 16K of RAM can do it. 30 qubits, a laptop, but this is exponential, right? So 31 qubits, you need something like twice the RAM of a laptop. And when you get to 48 qubits, we're talking about representing that with the memory that might be in a modern supercomputer. And at 100 qubits, right, it's just untenable in terms of the total number of multiples of supercomputers that you need to represent that state. Today, our most performant quantum processor is the IBM Quantum Heron, and it's at 156 qubits. And it's the most performant in the world. And one of the reasons that we're really good at making quantum processors is because IBM is really excellent at its semiconductor fabrication. Today, we're the only team that really are approaching this not as a research project, but really as an engineering challenge. And we're doing cycles of learning as you would have seen in the semiconductor days of year after year, going from node to node. And it's what's let us bring in some of these technologies that are so key to scaling, and scaling in a reproducible and reliable way. Things that are common in your current phones and your processors and your laptops, like bump bonds and multi-level wiring and through silicon vias. This takes a lot of effort to build in. But these capabilities allow us to really engineer at scale and to scale with quality. And so these, along with other innovations across our hardware and software stack, really helped us actually push Eagle towards the milestone in 2023 when we demonstrated what we call quantum utility. And so here in quantum utility, the idea is that we have a quantum computer that's able to perform accurate computations at a scale that are beyond the scope of exact brute force classical simulation. It's what you're able to do when you're at that scale of 100 qubits. And here, really, the idea is that in utility, you want to be able to run these quantum circuits that are challenging for the best classical computers and might even use classical approximate methods. The key here is that we really want to look at problems where there's also verifiability, right? At IBM, we're not just interested in running random circuits. In this result in 2023, we demonstrated quantum utility with this problem where it had a particular Ising spin model which was difficult to simulate classically, had no exact solution. When we published a result in Nature, within weeks, there were actually multiple approximate classical solvers that tried to solve the problem as well. But the fun thing here was that they all differed from each other in their results by about 20%. So I have to ask you, in the case where you don't have an exact classical solution, what's the right benchmark? I would say that the quantum execution on real quantum hardware actually now becomes the validity and the arbiter of these types of problems. And it becomes the point of comparison for approximate classical solvers. That is what we mean by utility, and that's why it's such an important milestone. Now, at the end of 2023, we introduced our next generation processor. It was the IBM Quantum Heron. It's a new tunable coupler architecture, 5x improvement in the median 2-qubit error rate over the utility experiment, significant crosstalk improvements. It really allows us to reach this milestone now running 5,000 circuits, 5,000 gate circuits. And we have 5 Herons that are available over the cloud for access, including a 6th one that's coming out soon with really remarkable numbers. Coherence times in the 300 microsecond range. And now we're getting towards 2-qubit gate errors that are in the best cases at the 5e-4 level. So then the next milestone we want to get to is quantum advantage. And here we really mean a quantum computer performing an information processing task more efficiently, cost effectively, or accurately than the best classical. And we're going to get there by using a technique called quantum-centric supercomputing, where we're going to have a hybrid architecture, leveraging the best from classical and quantum. And the key thing about this quantum-centric architecture is that we're already starting to work with it. Sarah talked a little bit about it, but really what we're looking at now is we're working with collaborators at RECON to model real molecular simulations of real molecules at a scale beyond what's been done before in quantum. Last year, we actually looked at iron sulfide clusters with them. First, an exact solvable one, where we were able to actually match performance using quantum plus HPC with HPC alone. And then we looked at a problem where actually it's beyond exact classical simulation. And we've been continuously improving the performance of this, leveraging HPC plus quantum. And it's now at a scale where that becomes a point of comparison. At some point, we will really come up against the best classical methods and have a point of comparison for us to reach quantum advantage using this type of integrated quantum-centric architecture. And so I want to also give you a quick preview that we're driving towards a new processor that will be released later on in the end of the year, which will help work towards further quantum applications, which is the IBM Quantum Nighthawk. 120 qubits, continues with the tunable couple architecture, and have a square lattice. But the square lattice versus the heavy hex allows us to really compress the circuit depths to be more tenable, and something that we're really excited to bring to our users. And so this is why we really boldly believe that we'll get towards this quantum advantage milestone in 2026. And I know I'm running out of time, and so I think beyond 2026 we have one more big milestone that we do want to get to, right? Which is that we want to get towards fault tolerance, right? And we're talking about here that these are going to be large-scale fault-tolerant quantum systems, leveraging our quantum low-density parity check codes, and we have an architecture that we're going to be releasing very soon that you're going to hear about. And so I'll leave you with this one, with this QR code to say get started with quantum, because it's already here in terms of actually accessing machines at the scale where you can explore these types of utility scale problems. Thank you very much. No time for questions, okay?
What I liked about that, Jerry, is you sort of teed us up nicely for a session that I will shoehorn this into. But the degree to which quantum and classical sort of can reinforce each other, that advances in either ultimately help the other. I'll keep harping on around about that. I don't think it's talked about enough. For the moment, I'd like to call to the stage Amal Kasri, Chief of Section for Basic Science, Research, Innovation, and Engineering at UNESCO, talking about Can You Speak Quantum? Are we almost speaking quantum?
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm going to ask this question now. Are we speaking quantum? And I will ask the same question at the end of the talk to see if we are really speaking quantum or not. Thank you very much for this kind invitation. We're really happy to be speaking here today. So let me just, before I start about why we want to speak quantum and what UNESCO is doing to do that, let me give you a very brief introduction about UNESCO and why UNESCO is currently the lead agency of the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology. So UNESCO is a United Nations agency dedicated specifically for education, science, and culture. Globally, actually, it is the only UN agency with a program in basic sciences. 80 years of experience in promoting science and education and culture for peace. Currently, UNESCO has 194 member states, and the main tasks at UNESCO is that it is a laboratory of ideas. We support member states. We work as intergovernmental organization closely with the governments to develop ideas, to develop policy analysis, and also a standard setter. We have several recommendations. You may have heard about the recommendation for open science, recommendation on the ethics of AI, and many others. So standard setters is very important work we do at UNESCO. Also, it's a catalyst and a motor for international cooperation and capacity building, which is one of the most important things we do at UNESCO. So the natural sciences sector at UNESCO, the S actually reflects that, which has been there since the very beginning. What motivates us as the natural science sector is really the global challenges we are all facing. Failure of climate change, mitigation and adaptation, the extreme weather conditions, natural disasters, man-made disasters, and many others. All these major challenges put a lot of pressure on the natural resources. They cause sometimes many conflicts and extremism sometimes. So it's really important to find major solutions for these challenges in order to help people everywhere and support and promote peace. And to do that, we have several intergovernmental and international programs like International Basic Sciences Program, the Water, the Hydrology Program, Man and the Biosphere, and many others. And let me show here this briefly. Actually, this pyramid summarizes what we do when it comes to the fields of basic sciences and engineering. So we start really with the fundamentals, the STEM education. We have hands-on tools to help teachers and school teachers and students in the field of science. And it's not only for the purpose of having more scientists and engineers, it's also about creating these critical skills and ensuring that the scientists have these critical and skills to judge and criticize. And then it comes to the next level is really the interaction between this level and the university and the schools, the teachers, the professors, the researchers, the institutes. And then it comes to working with early career scientists and researchers, building their capacity, using again hands-on tools and many initiatives that I will mention. Some of them are related to the quantum technology. And then the engineering at the top of the pyramid is really the innovation, how then to be innovative. And for that we have also several initiatives like series of innovation hubs and innovative cities, which is our new initiative we are trying to launch soon. So now part of our work is actually advocacy. Advocacy is very important because it's very important to raise the awareness about certain topics, and this is what is behind international years, international decades, international days. We have many of those. So the significance of international years is that it serves as a critical platform for raising awareness, driving action, and fostering collaboration globally among the institutes and among the governments. So raising awareness, of course, is very important for major global challenges like climate change, because sometimes the knowledge is not there. So, and you need to make sure that everyone is aware of this knowledge. So now, let us move to quantum. And here, I shouldn't actually speak about what the fundamentals of quantum, and so I'm a physicist, but everyone here also, I mean, many of you already know what quantum is. So it really explores the fundamental properties of energy and matter, and it's really the basis for modern physics, as you all know. And away from all the vocabularies that became quite popular among the community now, like superposition and entanglement and so on, and others, I think we want to, the scientists and the engineers are aware of that, but I think we need also to talk about the higher level of this, or the better way of disseminating this knowledge and making sure that everyone is engaged in this field. So what does it mean really to speak quantum? The questions that we asked in the beginning. So quantum science is increasingly recognized as really a language. It is really becoming a language, and I will tell you why, but at the very end. But there is a significant gap, and the gap, it's twofold gap. There is a gap, a huge gap actually, in the infrastructure, in the knowledge between the North and the Global South. For UNESCO as an intergovernmental organization, this is a major concern for us. And also there is a gap in the comprehension. It's even among the community, even among the professionals in the field, there is also a gap. And that's why becoming a language may help in reducing this gap. So quantum science, I think something is missing here. Okay, sorry. Okay. So since quantum science and technology will impact several fields, as we all know, like the energy, the healthcare, and so on, so it has to become first a technical language among maybe the community, the scientists and the engineers, but then how to bring it to be a language also for the public. So the public awareness and the misconception is very important to address. So despite the rapid development of quantum technologies, we have noticed that the public awareness remains very limited. And the misconception is also a problem. And we have seen that not specifically about quantum, but in incidents like the pandemic, for example, we have seen that this can be a major issue, and then we need to find solutions for this. So now for the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, IYQ 2025, this was proclaimed by United Nations General Assembly in 2024, and actually 2025, as you all know, celebrating 100 years since the concept of quantum mechanics became known, and it became the basis for modern physics. So it was important to draw the attention of the world to this, also with the peaking happening in the field of quantum science and technology, as we have heard today. So the background and inspiration for this came from many previous years. For example, the International Year of Light, which was very successful also to raise the awareness about photonics and its application. So International Year of Quantum was built on that. And the vision here is really that the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology aims to harness transformative potential of quantum innovations to address global societal challenges, fostering collaboration and advancing education in this critical field. So we hope that we can harness the global support to drive equity and innovation in the quantum field. I'm going to speak specifically more about equity and reducing the gap, as I mentioned. So we need to do this through several initiatives. Education is very important. So education and outreach is also one of the things we try to put a lot of effort in. For example, we are starting online courses in quantum algorithms targeting African female scientists, because as you know, a number of female scientists is still relatively low compared to all the progress happening in the world in many other fields. It still doesn't exceed 30%, and in specific fields like quantum and AI, it's even much less, and this is something we really need to address. However, this course will be spread also to other regions and all to achieve gender balance in this field. Also policy support. We are working on developing policies, working closely with member states to help them to develop strategies. We all know that only several countries have developed or have a vision to develop policies and strategies when it comes to quantum technology. We have heard from Sir Peter Knight in the morning the wonderful things that happening in UK, and I hope that to hear the same from many other countries around the world at some point. So effective decision making when it comes to quantum is very important. That's why we work closely with policy makers. We just finalized a policy brief targeting member states of UNESCO that will be launched soon, and it's addressing the link between quantum science and technology and SDGs. Also, another major initiative we have at UNESCO started more than 2 years ago, and now we are implementing it for the field of quantum technology, is remote access initiative. This is basically to allow scientists in the global south remote access to the laboratory equipment and sophisticated techniques that they are not available. And it's really helping many scientists in Africa now. Almost 11 African countries are having access to some techniques, and we are expanding this to go to other techniques and also beyond Africa. And it's basically, this is the QR code. Please take a look and help us also, please. If you are willing to support us by giving remote access to your laboratory, we will be very grateful, because it's really changing the life of many scientists, helping in reducing the brain drain in Africa. Another very important point is that monopolizing the technology of the science by only few developers can be really dangerous for the field of science itself, because this limits the innovation, limits the progress. And you need to make sure that you have diversity, you have many people who are working in this field, because this will ensure the continuity and ensure the progress in the field. And this is really one of our major aims at UNESCO when it comes to new technologies and to science in general. Also, we hold a series of entrepreneurship boot camps linking science and engineering to entrepreneurship. The idea really is to build and develop these innovative skills, and we are expanding this now to innovative hubs or innovation hubs in collaboration with some universities and science parks. So we have actually, with all these partners that you see here, we organized several boot camps around the world in 3 different continents so far, and we are expanding this further, and we hope to do this also. In fact, we will do one in quantum science and technology in Spain in July. So the importance of global collaboration here is very important in order to reduce the gap, as I said, and to ensure the equity. Global collaboration is extremely important. So collaboration across nations will amplify the global efforts, and this is something we do at UNESCO by holding several events, by bringing the policymakers together, by raising the awareness, as I mentioned in the beginning. So the path forward and the call to action is for all of you, really to recognize the importance of equity and expanding or going beyond the limitation in the access to this quantum, this technology, and actually technology, emerging technologies in general, not only quantum. So quantum science and technology really hinges on collaborative efforts in education, in policy, and industry engagement, which is very important. We have heard from wonderful talks today from also industry, so I hope this can be also expanded to other regions. And in order to understand how to do this better, we issued this survey. Please help us by participating to this or giving your vote. So far we received more than 500 responses, and we are willing for hopefully to get more. This is being done now with IBM and the Unitary Foundation, and we hope that this will help us to publish a report by end of the year of Quantum Science and Technology to help us find the policies or develop new policies to reduce the gaps in the field of quantum. And here I just wanted to show you how many events are taking place around the world. This is actually from the website of the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, and you can see that the blue dots here, you can see that it's everywhere almost, but we need more. We really need more. It's not only about the advocacy, it's about engaging everyone. So I really invite all of you to join us in implementing the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology by organizing workshops, by organizing training, by giving opportunities for scientists in the Global South to learn more and to advance their career and their research. And I just want to answer the question in 2 words.